You can't write code. You're not an engineer. You're not a designer. You can't put a hammer to a nail. I built the circuit board. The graphical interface was stolen from Xerox PARC. Jeff Raskin was the leader of the Mac team before you threw him off his own project. Everything, someone else designed the box. So how come 10 times in a day, I read Steve Jobs as a genius? What do you do?
I play the orchestra.
Trent?
Wait, no. Wait, you want to start?
Yeah. If you don't mind.
All right, I'm ready.
I'll keep this all in.
No.
Got it. Trent, I do what I want. Trent?
Hi, Parth. Hello. Nice to see you.
It's good to see you too. If you don't mind my asking, can I ask you a question? Is that okay? Or...
Yeah, sure. Ask away.
I know you love this question, so which is why I ask it.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're considering cutting the segment. But yeah, who knows?
We're considering many things, cutting Trent out of... Anyways, what have you been eating most recently? If you don't mind me asking.
Thanks. So I think I have adopted a new philosophy that I can only eat out one meal a day, and if I do two or more, then I'm like a financially irresponsible garbage person. And so made a financially responsible smoothie this morning, my standard recipe: banana, frozen fruit, yogurt, cranberry juice, blended up, delicious. Then I made myself a sandwich because I thought if I make myself a sandwich now, I can buy myself dinner from a third party. You know, as we are doing this podcast, down the street, some men are handcrafting me tacos. After the podcast, I'm going to pick them up and, do unspeakable things to them. But what have you eaten?
That sounds beautiful, Trent. It's funny you mentioned pizza because I myself had Totino's pizza rolls.
Ah, so you're more of a pizza rolls or pizza bagels kind of guy?
I think, here's the thing.
Tell me.
I think I more often have pizza bagels.
So you think they're more readily available to you? They're offered more often?
I feel like they're also filled with, less, garbage, I would say.
But I kind of feel like pizza rolls are, much more filling. They feel like there's more substance there.
I prefer pizza rolls.
As do I.
I just think that they're worse for you. I feel grosser if I have more of them than I should. Whereas if I have more pizza bagels, I'm kind of like, this is
pizza
mostly
bagels
just reheated
are kind of
bread.
all bread. Yeah, and there's just, cheese topping and tomato paste on top. When I was in middle school, there was a period where every day I would come home from school and put 8 Totino's pizza rolls on a paper plate, put that in the microwave, and then, just...
do unspeakable things to them to bring us back to the...
That's one way to put it.
Because that's what we do at Craft Services, is we're real smooth about getting this sort of ship on track, if you'll excuse me mixing my vehicle metaphors.
So what episode is it? Who are we talking to?
Well, we'll tell you
after the introduction music.
Cue the intro.
All right, and then...
Bow, bow, ba, da, bow.
And then... And then we cancel the show.
I hope.
If one of us, Parth, if I died, would you release all of the episodes posthumously? Would you continue the pod?
I guess I would release them and be like, I guess...
But would you do discussions? You'd do monologue pod?
I feel like I should continue it in your name, in your honor. But then it's also kind of weird because it's like, I don't want to change our...
Would you bring someone on to replace me, or would that be insensitive? There would have to be a mourning period.
No, you'd easily be replaced. Easily.
So there
day one, right after. I don't know. I mean, you're cool. You're not that cool. This is all staying in, by the way.
Do you have any idea on who that person might be?
Viraj.
Oh, your 13-year-old little brother?
Yeah.
Cool. That would really make the podcast less diverse.
It's hard out there being a white man with blonde hair.
All right. You're ready to resume. I feel like I never do this. You want it?
I can do it if you don't want to do it.
I'll do it.
Okay. Let's see. Listeners, you're about to hear Trent Algair try to bring us in. A thing he never does, because I carry this fucking show.
Thanks for that introduction in the introduction. Welcome back to our show, Craft Services. We have a podcast. What's it about, Parth?
The movies.
And what do we do each week? We interview someone who worked on a movie, no?
You're doing well, yeah.
And this week, we interviewed the cinematographer. What was his name?
Alwin Kuchler.
And wait, I forgot, was he delightful?
He was wonderful. I would
Yeah,
say.
wait, he was also insightful.
Yeah. These are all positive adjectives that are accurate.
Just overall interesting. He worked on other good movies that you probably care about too.
Yeah, he's worked on a bunch of cool movies. Sunshine, The Mauritanian, Divergent.
You're doing so good at naming examples.
It's what I do. But yeah, Trent, are we cool to enter this interview, or should we just never?
No. Yeah, sure.
I think do you think the listeners like that this bit of us canceling the pod, which is definitely not a bit, by the way. We consider it every time. Do you think they like it, or is it tiresome at this point?
It's a fun juxtaposition because of how much effort we put into the pod. That I don't know. When you have a podcast and you're 20 years old and you're a film student, there has to be a level of self-awareness about the fact that you have a podcast, and so I think you have to constantly reference the fact that you're willing to cancel it at any moment,
Right.
even if that's not exactly true. But when it comes to podcasting as a young adult man, just try not to take yourself too seriously, I think is a good, responsible position to have.
And a person who didn't take themselves too seriously was Alwin Kuchler. In this interview, he was a wonderful man, and you can now listen to him.
Now, listen to it. Stick around to the end of the episode, because that's where the secrets are spilled about our future content. Although we just released our slate, which says, the next 2 months of episodes.
But maybe you'll never know what'll come. All right, let's do it.
Yeah. Bye. But also, welcome to the interview.
Hello, and welcome to our interview with Alwin Kuchler. He's the cinematographer for such films as Sunshine, Divergent, and The Mauritanian. He also worked on our film for today, Danny Boyle's Steve Jobs. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for asking me to join your podcast.
Yeah, definitely. So just to start off, how did you first get involved with filmmaking? What was your start there?
I started with a Nikon FM, which I was given as a confirmation gift. My grandfather was a Protestant pastor. And then when you're 14 years old, all your relatives come together and they collect money. And then my present was a Nikon FM with a 50mm, which, funnily enough, my son is using now. But also I was really interested in comics, French comics. I also liked drawings. I liked anything kind of arty. I remember even with the Nikon FM, I did experiments with, I used an old TV and I put a mirror in front of it and I put Vaseline on it and objects and any form of experimentation I kind of enjoyed, including drawing, painting, photography. Then I started to do an apprenticeship as a stills photographer. And then I made a friend who was at the film school in Munich, and he asked me if I would shoot his film school exercises. So he came to my hometown, Düsseldorf, with what you call an RE2C. RE2C is, for those people who are not familiar, it's basically a Second World War camera design. And it has got 3 revolving lenses in front of it. I didn't know anything about the camera. It was the first time I was holding a film camera. And I used my Nikon FM as a light meter. I didn't even know that there was light meters for film cameras. So I just took light readings of people's faces with my Nikon FM and translated it to the ISO and the f-stop on the camera. And yes, and then we shot it. And then I thought afterwards, oh my God, he was asking me to do so many setups in one go. I thought I'm not sure that's for me because I kind of liked taking my time and trying this and trying that. But then he showed me the finished version, which was a black and white music video kind of. I think it was translated called Harbor Sounds, and it had editing and sound and everything. And I was really in awe of it. I guess because I've seen movies at that time, but suddenly being part of it was different than. At this point I wasn't I want to become a cinematographer. I was taken by the power of the the montage and the possibilities of sound. Then I didn't really know what kind of photographer I wanted to be. Do you know what I mean? I liked fashion photography in the sense that it was very free and creative, but I didn't like the people so much. in an area you had to work in. And I was not the lonely wolf kind of journalistic photographer. And to become an art photographer really didn't occur to me at the time. And then he asked me to do another exercise. So I still kept doing still photography, which I loved. But also I became more intrigued about filmmaking. And I guess in the end, I did actually really like the collaboration. Do you know what I mean? I like that you kind of got together with a bunch of people who want to do the same thing.
Right.
And so I guess I had the realization that actually I like collaboration. I mean, so what I'm describing here is over a longer period. But then I applied for the National Film and Television School in Beaconsfield in London, and then I got into that, and then that was a done deal. But I remember at the beginning I struggled because in photography you kind of retain always the copyright of your negatives, and do you know what I mean? You kind of can crop it the way you want. You know, there's not like a director who you argue with format you're shooting or something. So, and you end up when I was doing my video exercises, you were just ending up with a U-Matic at that time, which was like a bloody big cassette, and that was all you ever got for all the hard work you done. Do you know what I mean? So I kind of felt funny about that. Anyway, I got into the film school and I met a lot of great people. For me, the film school was great because, I moved from Germany to London. It was a new country. It was kind of a new language. And again, you were surrounded with everybody who wanted to make films. And it was really interesting to meet people from different cultures. Do you know what I mean? We had a female student there from Mongolia who was an actress, but now she wanted to be a director. And we had a Turkish student there, and we had, a Russian camera student came to visit us. So I found it really fascinating. It made me think about, okay, what different cultures bring to filmmaking and how it affects the use of sound from the Mongolian film director was so different than what we did. Do you know what I mean? So it was really interesting. And the pacing of a Russian film school student was so different than what came out of me naturally. You know what I mean? So to work with these people from very different cultural background was fascinating to me because it made me think about things like, why do I perceive something a certain way? Because, I think people who grew up in big cities maybe have a different perception of the speed of the world than if you grew up in the tundra or if you grew up in a very rural area. Do you know what I mean? So yes, I mean, that was kind of my starting point.
So how did you find yourself in the U.S. and what was the first motion picture set you worked on?
I mean, in principle, there was a point where in order to try other things or new things, I might as well go to America. Do you know what I mean? At this point, I felt like, okay, I couldn't grow that much more in London, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? But also, there was to be honest, I feel like I've gone a bit in a circle in the sense that I started with very independent films. You know what I mean? My first film was Ratcatcher. It was 1.8 million. And I was extremely grateful because it was a door opener for me. And it was so difficult to get your first film even made. It was a chicken and egg thing. So if you didn't have a film under your belt, nobody wants to hire you. Do you know what I mean? So
it's a catch-22. You can't become a waiter unless you've waited somewhere else before.
Yeah, that's it. It's kind of like that. Yeah, but then I felt like in order to grow or to earn more money, I also wanted to try to do bigger studio films. Do you know what I mean? Like films with bigger logistics and bigger budget and everything. And then, yes, I did some of these films, and then I kind of realized they're so commercial, these projects, and there's so many people involved, and they're so political. And even my position as a cameraman, I felt sometimes I became more of a manager than an artist. Do you know what I mean? So now I'm almost feeling more attracted again to smaller projects, or at least to projects where directors are auteur director, because I think to me it tends to be a more creatively more fulfilling job.
So to pivot into our topic of the day, how did you get involved with Steve Jobs?
Steve Jobs was a project. I think I had at some point different directors attached to it and different actors. And then I think suddenly it fell into place with Danny Boyle. and Michael Fassbender, and then Kate Winslet joined. I knew Danny Boyle from previous films of Sunshine, and the first time I worked with Danny Boyle was actually on, I think it was 28 Days Later. I did pickups.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I did pickups on that film. So I knew Danny for a while, and obviously because it was short notice, so I was kind of invited to the party. You know what I mean? And it was actually really short prep time, but because Danny did the one very unconventional thing about Steve Jobs was that Danny kind of said to me, it's really like a 3-act theater play. He wanted to approach it like a 3-act theater play. And one of the things, because it's an Aaron Sorkin script, so it's very word heavy. Mm-hmm. And so what he wanted to do is, he wanted to rehearse the first act and then shoot the first act, and then they would stop filming, and he would rehearse again for 2 weeks with the actors, and then shoot again. So because he wanted the actors to really know the text well, so they kind of could attack it with a lot of vigor and energy. So in a way, that allowed us, or me, it allowed us to prep, shoot, and then I could prep again. So that what also made it more possible to have a shorter prep initially. You know what I mean?
Well, that was going to be one of my questions. Is I knew that there was that sort of break period where the actors would rehearse. Were you ever a part of their rehearsal? Were you ever shooting the rehearsal with them, or were you sort of working out on your own?
No, I was working on my own. I mean, I had to pre-light, or we can come to that later. Like we had some difficult situation at the San Francisco Opera. So I was kind of prepping, but what happened sometimes is that Danny would come after the rehearsal. He would come to the location where I was prepping, and he would give me kind of notes about, what he thought the actors will do in the space. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, basically what Danny Boyle is very good at is that he gave me a very good initial brief for the film. And the very initial, the starting point when he worked with me was really that he said, look, the most important hire you're going to make on this film is going to be the Steadicam operator. Because I want to create that feeling that nobody can keep up with Steve Jobs, and I want Steve Jobs to never stand still. Mm-hmm. So I want to use a lot of Steadicam. So I very carefully kind of looked for Steadicam operators, and I was very lucky in the end. I got an excellent Steadicam operator. He also happened to be a graduate of Stanford University with a scholarship. So he was also a very bright kind of person who also really liked Aaron Sorkin's words and work. So that became really helpful, because there were scenes like in the San Francisco Opera where the actors would work over 3 floors through the building. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be able to walk with them along because they would go in lifts and everything. And he had this capability of remembering at the end of each take on which person, on which actor he was for which words, and if he needed reverses or not. One moving point was the mobility of the camera. The other one, he wanted it to be not to go longer than 9 hours with the actors, because he realized that it would be concentration-wise, it would be very exhausting for them to do like 9 hours with this body of dialogue. So he said, to approach the lighting that we don't have to give them such precise marks or no marks. So the lighting had to be clever or broader. So that was another big factor. Yeah.
So with you mentioning like walking up several levels of stairs in a single shot, it almost like would make more sense to be on location just because you can't just build a single room. So what would you say was like the ratio of on location to shooting inside a studio?
Everything was on location. And no, that's not true. Sorry, that's not true. The last act is actually a build. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Last act is a build, but the first 2 acts is all location. And again, it's an interesting filmmaker's decision, because I don't think the Americans understood why Danny Boyle insisted of shooting it in San Francisco. He really wanted to shoot it in some of the locations these events happened.
Right.
And it's kind of, it's interesting because it's not that tangible how it affects you, but it does affect you. Because you meet people who actually have worked on Steve Jobs' presentation in that time.
Sure.
You kind of it's a different feeling. You go through these hallways and think, well, actually, Steve Jobs did walk through these hallways. Do you know what I mean? So I think it affects you in a very positive way. But you can imagine also, like, working in San Francisco is not the easiest place, and it's certainly not the cheapest place. Do you know what I mean? So I think from the American producers kind of world, they said, like, why don't you want to shoot it somewhere where it's much cheaper and nobody knows where this room is? Do you know what I mean? So what I like about somebody like Danny Boyle is that he chooses this path. He understands that this path will have some consequences in terms of money and other issues, but he also takes responsibilities for that. Do you know what I mean? So he works with us. And he really works hard for making it, laying out. And to give you an example, like the San Francisco Opera, you have to imagine it's like we were shooting in the opera while there were like 5 other productions going on, like the Nutcracker and whatever else was going on. And he realized that he didn't want to give the impression like Hollywood is coming to town and we're just going to take it over. Because trust me, there are plenty of other egos in that building. You know what I mean? So he made an effort to go there with me to a show, and after the show we would talk to the creative director of the show and people involved in the show, just to get to know them and get to know their world and everything. So he understood it would be harder to shoot in the opera, but he also worked towards making it work. Do you know what I mean? Which I really appreciate and respect in a director.
So one of the things that I kind of found really interesting was the decision to have each act be shot in a different format. And I was wondering, where did that decision come from? And, which, because I believe the first act was 16 millimeters, second was 35, and the third was digital. Where do you fall on film digital? Where, did you prefer 16 to 35, or is it just different? Anything you could speak on that?
So, I mean, first of all, it was when I started to think about what the first act spaces was, I kind of started to slightly dread it because it was really in neon lit corridors and white corridors and 70s kind of bad architecture. Do you know what I mean? And
yeah.
And as a cinematographer, you think, well, how the heck can you make that interesting? I mean, how the heck can you make that different? And then I thought, well, 16 mil has got a reduction of information. Do you know what I mean? Because you've got so much, it's film grain. So somehow the thought came to me that also that, period wise, that you have got these 3 acts, and in a way that Steve Jobs historically really has taken us. He was a big part of taking us to the digital age. Do you know what I mean? So it kind of,
sure.
It was also, I thought, well, that would make a good journey. Do you know what I mean? So I presented the idea to Danny Boyle quite early on and said, well, how do you feel about if you start shooting on film and then the last act is digital? I think I said, like, start on film and the last act is digital. And then he said, oh, how about the first act is 16 mil? And then we did, I remember we did a test, and at this time it was already like a couple of years of digital. We did a test on 16 mil, and I think we reviewed it, and we were like in shock how grainy it was. Before, when we went between 35 and 16, I wasn't as aware of the grain than, with 5 years of shooting at digital. So, but then also I really loved it because I felt like it made you look more at the faces. But we also, we had like a dialogue about it. For example, like on Trent, on your background, you've got these film posters, American animals and everything, So if I would shoot that setup of you in front of 16 mil, these details would become far less important because A, they would be slightly out of focus, and B, they would be harder for the eye to decipher because of the film grain. So we kind of also partly had the discussion about, okay, if you shoot 16 mil, you have to think more carefully about the shot size, because if there's certain information you really want the audiences to see, you just might have to go in closer than when you were on digital. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. But
yeah, so the idea of shooting from film to digital was originally my idea. But also, interestingly enough, Danny Boyle is also very clever because he realized that it would immediately the value would be a PR benefit. Do you know what I mean? Because it gives people, it's kind of a selling point.
You can market that.
You can work on it. Do you know what I mean? People are interested on these kind of factors. Do you know what I mean? So will it cost some more money? Yes, but it's aesthetically great and it helps you to sell the film.
So with that being said, the whole 3-act play, did the stage-like format and, the Aaron Sorkin words per minute, did that affect your shooting style? Like, how did the script change your outlook going in?
Yeah, I mean, I think because Aaron Sorkin's script, or especially, this script, Steve Jobs and some of his previous works, they definitely have got like the rhythm of a theater play. Do you know what I mean? Like there's definitely a rhythm to the words that they definitely have a real impact on everybody. They have an impact on how the actors will play it, and they definitely have an impact on how we shoot it. You just have to rely to some degree on. You just have to trust not to do too much. You know what I mean? Like I remember that originally Danny completely realized that and just went for it and just wanted to glide with the Steadicam so that he also didn't have to interrupt that rhythm too much. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I remember like 2 weeks out, I think he suddenly got really scared of it because he suddenly realized, how can I put my trademarks visuals into it? Do you know what I mean? And he was trying to think how do I get my more creative visuals into it? Do you know what I mean? So for example, like I was doing the whole shooting. That's the other thing. While we were shooting, he had originally this idea in between the sections to put time lapses into it. You know what I mean? So I was doing time lapses of San Francisco. He wanted to give San Francisco more of a representation, and in the end, it was kind of completely taken out because there wasn't the time for it. Yes, I mean, to answer your question, the rhythm of the script has got a really strong imprint on all of us. Do you know what I mean? And also of the shooting style and the visuals. Yes.
I watched the trailer today, and I was surprised by the amount of San Francisco exterior shots, which I guess were cut from the film. But just a quick question is, was the Steadicam used primarily on the walk and talks, or when people were stationary also?
I mean, it's quite a while that I've seen it, but yeah, definitely all on the walking talks. I think there's like one really big, we had once a really big 50-foot techno, which was, I think, when when his daughter watches the screen from behind, and we wanted to go
and show the crowd.
Yeah, we wanted to go from behind the girl to the screen and over the screen because the crowd was we were on the back side of the screen and we wanted to see the people on the other side. Even when we were in these changing rooms, wherever we could, we would use the Steadicam. But sometimes I would operate this. If there was a second camera, I would operate it. I mean, off a dolly or, handheld or whatever other devices. But I think you can safely say that maybe 80% of the film is a Steadicam shot. Do you know what I mean?
Well, just because you brought up Danny Boyle's sort of directorial style has a very specific visual language. There's certain sections in the movie where, like, during the Skylab monologue, you sort of see the visuals of documentary footage and whatever, or during when Steve Jobs and John Scully are talking at the very beginning in the first act, there's the Bob Dylan lyrics. And I was wondering, are those visual cues that you are with him, like he's communicating that to you and you're shooting that, or is that something that you found out later, like he did that in editing?
No, I mean, the Bob Dylan lyrics actually we projected upon some of them.
Oh, wow. They look cool.
Yeah. No, that was really projected. We had like one technical guy with us because we had so many different monitors. Germany was film technically more complicated because you have to sync them and all that kind of stuff. And he did also the projections. And we worked out with him like the how powerful this projector needs to be and how high it would be. So I think there might have been one or two lyrics which might have been done in post. So that was kind of planned and it was kind of designed that way. I think the scene in the corridor was actually, I think it was partly coming to Danny in the editing, actually. I remember. Yeah, I think that came in the editing rather than when we were shooting it. I think it was an afterthought, I think.
And there are a lot of computer screens also, and I know some movies just slap like a blue screen over them and deal with it later. Was that the case, or like did Well, was there actually like eye paint like up and such?
No, I mean on this one also because we had so much of these really old monitors.
Hmm.
I think we did a lot of it in camera, for real, and because we had like this excellent technician, it made it easier. Do you know what I mean? Like he facilitated it that he could have like 10 monitors and he would sync them so that the face bar would be all the same. And because we had like so many computer screens and monitors from different generations, which made it even more complicated. Like I'm pretty sure that shot, for example, with the very early scene where we had this the original iMac or whatever it was called with the girl, and he turns it around and the girl has drawn on it. I do seem to remember that was for real. I mean, there might have been the odd one, which might have been for other reasons not being in camera, but a lot of it was for in camera. Yeah.
So we saw on the special features that like the Apple keynotes were shot, and we were surprised by this because it seems like such an artistic choice that like everything but the product launch itself is shown. And so did you shoot the keynotes?
Yeah, yes, we did actually. We got some old cameras, I think. And I remember because my operator, I think, is just featured in the keynote as a camera operator from that time. I mean, the cool thing about this, the other cool thing was about the Steve Jobs film was that we managed to fill these holes for real because there was such an interest about a film
Right.
making about Steve Jobs that people just turned up in their hundreds. Do you know what I mean? So that was really cool when you had. I did very much enjoy these big crowd scenes because it was like they really did generate that great energy and that feeling you would be present there.
Just to get back to your working relationship with Danny Boyle, I mean, we didn't know, but you did some pickups on 28 Days Later, and you shot Sunshine. So how has your working relationship? How did it evolve into Steve Jobs? Sort of, how did that change?
It's a good question. I mean, I would say because like one of the things of Danny Boyle, like Danny Boyle has got his own ideas, right? So he said to me a while ago, probably while Sunshine, he always said to me, Alvin, UDPs, if you stop operating, you just become arrogant and lazy. You know what I mean? So he has got these ideas of like what a DP should be. But also he did realize on this one, obviously I couldn't operate a Steadicam. You know what I mean? So I think it was confusing to himself because he knew that I couldn't operate that much technically for this film. So that was a big change. And he always tried to make it a competition between me and the other operator. Like when there was a situation. So I guess also like, the material is so different. You know what I mean? Like, Sunshine, it was in a way all about lighting, and it was all like carefully constructed and it was about sequences, whereas Steve Jobs is all about words, rhythm, and, these things I said about like shooting within 9 hours and don't give too many marks. And the lighting had to be, broader or clever for these kind of things.
I was going to ask, did you ever watch other Sorkin productions for, like, obviously, like, The West Wing is a huge thing that uses Steadicam pretty much for all of its walk and talks. And did you ever look at other stuff to see if that would inform your work, or did you just sort of let your thing be its own thing?
No, I mean, I independently, I've seen Facebook. Do you know what I mean? I've seen...
Yeah, the social network, yeah.
I've seen West Wings. I have seen West Wing, but not when I was making this film. I mean, when I read a script, I just read for face value. Do you know what I mean? There's a point where you kind of have to cut yourself off from, other influences. You know what I mean? And I think you just have to see, okay, what does that material do to me? Do you know what I mean? What do I feel? The one thing we did realize on, is when you read a script and you've got the written pages in front of you, you read it completely in your own pace and accord and everything. And when I started to watch the first days of Rushes, I kind of realized, oh, fuck, actually, like obviously the actors, they're hammering it out with a certain speed. And I think there was also this realization with Danny and me and the editor and everybody. If you bombard audiences with a certain amount of information, it can become exhausting. So the trickiest part, and I think is you have to applaud the editor a lot for that, is to kind of have a rhythm that the dialogue is exciting, but not overwhelming. And how do you achieve that? I mean, you achieve that partly through the editing options you give yourself, and partly to build in moments where you kind of know, okay, you need a reprieve, or you need a mellowing down to build up for the next crescendo. So that was very specific, I guess, to an Aaron Sorkin script. Do you know what I mean? It's just to realize that you have to be able to pace that dialogue, you know what I mean? Or craft it.
So I was wondering about your pre-production process, whether you do storyboards or extensive shot lists, or whatever your personal preferences, and how involved you are in post, whether it's color correction or whatever it may be.
I definitely do sometimes my own storyboards to show something to the director. I can't ever remember that I've used storyboards with Danny, actually. I can't remember that, we used that. The only things I got before the actors would come on set was these visits from Danny, where we had like a 4-page dialogue sequence that we would pace it out. I mean, we would read the dialogue ourselves and kind of see where we think people are at a certain point, and then how they would progress. Do you know what I mean? And we would probably look at lenses through a viewfinder. But we didn't do storyboarding. That's for sure. It's also like, I guess, a film where the camera's constantly moving, it doesn't quite make sense, because you would have to draw so many bloody frames. Sometimes I use storyboards. I mean, I'm working right now with a director called Neil Berger, and we use a lot of storyboards, very simple little drawings. They help me because I kind of memorize things better that way. Anything I draw with my hand, I just memorize. I like them as a communication tool. What I tend to do a lot is, like on my iPad Pro, for example, like I like to take photos on location, and then I draw into the photos. Do you mean like people or whatever? My experience also has been that, every director come with such different strengths and weaknesses, and you just always start from scratch when you start a new film of how do you communicate your ideas to each other. Everybody responds differently to it.
So just to ask about a few specific shots or scenes that we, both liked. The John Scully, Steve Jobs portion in the middle of the movie is like one of the greatest things I've ever seen. And I was wondering what that sequence was like to shoot. And also, I think that it has flashbacks to previous scenes. So was that something that was, he had to have longer hair, I think, in that. So was that something you shot during the 1984 stuff, or, what was the scheduling for that? Like, if you can remember, I know it was a while ago now.
I gotta be honest, I can't remember chronologically where we put that in. But as you said, it was a very big, compact scene. Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, I do remember that we went there with stand-ins and lensed it up that way, and we kind of determined the kind of shots we wanted to do. And then the rest really was maybe slightly tweaked on the day, according to what the actors would bring to the game. Do you know what I mean? But yes, sorry, I can't answer. I can't remember when that was shot, or like if you had any consideration. That's too long ago.
Just in relation to that, in the boardroom scene where it's like raining really hard in the background, was that green screened? Or were there real windows and then it was added in post? I was just wondering.
No, that was for real. The rain was for real.
Oh, that's fortuitous.
Yeah, and that was very carefully designed, actually, because so the rain was really important for Danny. I mean, it was like
I can't imagine the scene without it.
Yeah, and Danny said, "Look, this is the most historic firings in corporate history." And he wanted to give it, a certain weight, and he just loved the drama of the rain. I mean, he really emphasized, he didn't want it like a little trickle or tickle. He wanted it to rain, and he wanted it to bring drama to the scene. With Guy Dyers, the excellent production designer, we spent some time planning it, and partly because of that, I suggested to build in the light source into the table, because I wanted the actors to be lit and wanted to keep the walls as dark as I possibly could.
Good idea. It looks fucking awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. But so, like between the designer and me, I mean, again, coming back, that's great collaboration, because if you work with great people, you kind of communicate to each other,
Sure.
What your thoughts are, and then we put our heads together and we came up with great material on the walls, and we did a rain test before to make sure that it wouldn't be underwhelming when Danny would look at it. So yeah, that was carefully orchestrated, and it was done for real.
Another shot we really like was like the wide stuff on the parking garage in the very end, with Steve Jobs talking to his now adult daughter, and we were wondering, was that like really shot on a parking structure, or what was that all about?
Well, I mean, first of all, Danny, you were very aware that 99%, a lot of the film is in windowless spaces. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think if you look at the film, I think it's the first time and probably the only time you are actually outside.
Yeah, that's why it's so striking. Like the sky seems so big and blue.
Yeah, and then we happened to find it again. We happened to find it for real. Yeah, so we happened to find, like, even that high white. We found another building which was overlooking this parking structure, and we were looking maybe quite a while for it to find the right parking structure and another building we could look onto it. No, that was, I mean, Danny, the director, Danny Boyle, he does love to do things as much for real as he can. I mean, I think, he's in that way like Chris Nolan. Do you know what I mean? They're like people who try to do things as physically for real as if whenever they can. And I personally, I love it, because it just gives everybody a sense when you're there. It impacts the actors if you got real rain, or it impacted the actors in sunshine when the lights got extremely bright. I mean, your eyes physically react, your irises get smaller. So physical things really everybody responds to, and I think it inspires you to do certain things. You know what I mean? So if you compare it to films like 300, where everything is in front of green screen, I think if you look at it carefully, or if you would let it look now, you also kind of see there's a certain vacuum about the feeling about it. Do you know what I mean?
It kind of feels smaller it kind of feels like it's shot on a stage.
Yeah, I mean, from my own experience, when you spend like 3 or 4 days in front of a green screen, it sucks all energy out of you.
It just doesn't give the actors anything to work with. Like it really goes it goes the extra mile if they're interacting with the space.
That's right, but also, you get ideas. Do you know what I mean? Like, an actor might lean next close to a wall, and you suddenly realize, oh, the wall is shiny, and the actor reflects in the wall, and you base the whole shot around these elements. Do you know what I mean? And
right.
Yeah, you never have happy accidents if you're shooting on green screen.
That's right. It's too, I don't know. It's not, some people love it. I personally don't like it. I think it's like the camera, it's a bit like a lot of the superhero movies. The camera can do anything in conjunction with the green screen and everything. But I don't know, it's not personally my thing. I can do it, but it's not my favorite way of working.
So the last scene that I wanted to talk about was the final scene in the movie where Steve Jobs is walking out and there's all those flashing cameras. Was that something that you just took from the script and that was just sort of what you went with, or was that a decision that you and Danny Boyle made together to sort of end it on this very bright thing with all the lights flashing?
No, that was also carefully planned, and I think it was about that every presentation at the end of every act has to be bigger than the one before. But then it's obviously also this moment where we see from his daughter's point of view. Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of, I mean, we didn't use words like this, but at that point, it's almost like Steve Jobs is like godlike creature, isn't it? Like
sure. I mean, he even looks like the Steve Jobs we all know and some of us loved.
Yeah, black turtleneck and blue jeans and dad shoes. Yeah, he's in his Halloween costume.
Yeah, exactly. I guess it's also meant to present the imprint of the daughter's vision of her dad. You know what I mean? Seeing it in a different light. I mean, literally. I mean, I remember with my gaffer, we were hiding film lights in between the audiences, so there was a mixture of film lights flashing as well as magnesium flashes and every little flash we could get our hand on. So we put a lot of work into get this cacophony of flashes going. Yeah.
So your latest credit was on the Mauritanian, and we were wondering what that production was like.
I really loved it. It was a project which was very dear to my heart. First of all, I thought it was interesting to do a film for once about a Muslim, because because of the way they're very often portrayed in the West. But it's also a film about big injustice, and I guess I love stories which are about real people to some degree. You know what I mean? Because I find that inspiring, and I find that interesting stories to tell. And the Mauritanian is a story about Muhammadu Slahi, who wrote this book in his imprisonment in Guantanamo. I mean, I met the real person. We met the real person, and these things are affecting you. Again, it's different because Kevin MacDonald, the director, he comes from documentaries, so he's like he's an incredible researcher. So he kind of hits you with a lot of fascinating details. I mean, I give you an example. I mean, like the real Muhammad comes from this population, but it's a really small country. It's 500,000 people in Mauritania. But land-wise, it's probably as big as Wyoming or something. It's a massive land stretch, but a lot of it is desert. And they traditionally they are Bedouins, and he was like the first generation of people who got an education, and then he got a scholarship to Germany. One of the details was, for Bedouins, everything is about orientation. Where north, south is, and west and east, and then you can see it. Because if you're in a landscape like the desert, you kind of lose your orientation like nothing, because sand dunes move and sand dunes look very similar. Within the culture, it's ingrained in you to have that sense of orientation. So to imagine somebody like this being put into a tiny room where you don't even know if it's day or night must be even worse than it would be for you and me. We would find out stories like, if the only time he worked out eventually that if he would look down the toilet bowl and he would look down into the pipe, he could see if the pipe was catching daylight or not, because they were slightly raised off the ground. So that's the only way he could tell, because he would say things like, sometimes he would sleep, he would wake up, and he would not know if he could celebrate because he slept 8 hours or if he only slept 2 hours. Do you know what I mean? It was so disorienting. Unfortunately, there were other details which didn't make their way into the film. He told us that these people who interrogated him, in reality, in the real life, they were wearing Star Wars masks, right? And he could hear the guards outside arguing which character's mask they would carry before they would come in and torture him. Do you know what I mean? So you've got this extremely weird, world. Unfortunately, not everything could make its way into the film.
Sure, you have to kill your darlings sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, like, it was an interesting project for me also because I got much earlier involved in the film than normal. Do you know what I mean? Like, normally I get approached once the finances are raised and a script is there. Because I know Kevin personally, and I know from other projects, we talked about it much earlier, and he said, well, if I make a film only from Muhammad's point of view, I'm going to get like 1.5 million, and so he decided to go more for a structure where he would make it more like a thriller. Do you know what I mean? Is he guilty? Is he innocent? And you've got these other characters like Jodie Foster, the lawyer, and Benedict Cumberbatch, the prosecutor. So the structure became a different one. I mean, you could have made other films about it. You could have made a film like Son of Soul. Do you know what I mean? Where it's all like extremely from one. Are you guys familiar with Son of Soul?
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
Well, you guys should, especially as film school students, you should check it out. It's a film about a guy in a concentration camp, and it is kind of impressive with what singularity the filmmakers kind of filmed it, because it's all from the point of view of the protagonist. Not always literally, but very much psychologically with that in mind. It was a film which came to my mind when we were making the film, because I thought the experience is good. Anyway, you should check it out. It's a great film, and it's a very strong film. So yeah, so that's like the Mauritanian was. I loved working on it. Like, it was also like great because the actors really wanted to be there and wanted to make this film, for more than personal reasons, and that made it a great film experience. So.
Would you say it's time for the Big Kahuna final question?
Yes, I would say so. So just to wrap up, we like to ask our guests the Big Kahuna, as Trent put it, of what was the last great thing you watched?
Oh, good question. Oh, actually, I loved Sound of Metal.
Oh, awesome.
We just watched that. Trent and I we just did an Oscar episode and we both watched it.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that your favorite of all the Best Picture nominees?
I think so, yes. Like, because I think as being a filmmaker yourself or being involved in it, I think you always deconstruct so many films. Do you know what I mean? And I just felt myself, I was so drawn into the film and I forgot I was watching a film. Well, there were lots of great performances in it, but I thought Riz Ahmed was mind-blowingly good. Do you know what I mean? Like,
For sure.
And I really liked the storytelling. It felt so unforced and casual, but yet really powerful.
I mean, it's interesting you pick that movie as a DP just because it's so sound fixated. So
Yeah.
would you say you find yourself drawn towards like visual masterpieces, or I mean, at least The Sound of Metal is a little bit of a change of scenery due to your profession.
Okay, that's a fair enough comment. Yeah, it's a good question. I guess I don't know, as having matured in my own kind of way, I guess in the end, you do mature into that. It is all about the story. Do you know what I mean? It's like either a story is powerful and draws you in, or it isn't. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, to be honest, like like I've seen bits of Monk, and of course they're visually, stunning, but it just did. The film itself didn't really.
You are preaching to the choir, friend. We love David Fincher, and it was the lack of story, despite the beautiful technical elements.
Yeah, I didn't get into it. I mean, so but like Minari, I watched also Minari, which I did like, and like to be honest, I thought it was really beautifully shot in a very simple way. I mean, if you deconstruct it, I feel like the lenses they picked for the moments and the beats and the scenes, I think it's very well done. Do you know what I mean? I think it's very beautifully done, and without becoming untrue to what the story needs or making locations visually too interesting, but it doesn't fit the story. But yeah, I guess Sound of Metal is just I just happened to be. I started watching it. I didn't know if I would like it, and to be honest, I was kind of blown away by it.
Sure. Well, Trent, would you say should we bring this out now?
Yeah, I'd say that was a successful interview. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much to Alwin Kuchler for coming to talk with us. He worked on Divergent, Sunshine, The Mauritanian, and of course our film today, Steve Jobs. Thank you so much.
Good luck with your own film career.
Thank you.
We'll need it.
Trent, was that interview good or not?
I don't know. I really liked it. Did you?
I had a good time.
So with that being said, that interview's in the past. Let's look forward. We're discussing Steve Jobs next week. Who's going to be there?
It's just going to be your best friends, Parth and Trent. Because you don't need anyone more.
The co-hosts of the show. Yeah, maybe the next few weeks. Steve Jobs, The Departed, Army of Darkness. Who knows if we have a discussion guest? Maybe just Parth and I go man to man in the digital ring.
Yeah, we're gonna go buck wild for the podcast, guys. I don't think you guys are ready.
Yeah, the 50th episode spectacular is coming up. Wait, is that gonna be the interview with Doug Leffler?
Maybe. I don't kiss and tell.
Was he the second unit director on Army of Darkness? I forget.
You'll just have to find out in, when's it, like 3 weeks? 4 weeks?
I don't know. Guys, just keep listening to our show.
Yeah, we're begging. And while you're at it, what do you want them to do, Trent?
What I want you to do, if you've come this far, you like something about the show, and so let's get down to business. You're going to go to Apple Podcasts. You're going to scroll down to the review section, and then you're going to give us 5 stars, and then write a positive review. How's that sound?
I think that's a great idea. I'll be honest with you. That sounds like a great idea.
And hear me out, bonus round. If while you're at it, you subscribe to our channel, I wouldn't mind. That sounds pretty good to me. It's because Parth and I, we want to make money. We want to monetize the podcast, and so we can quit all of our jobs and just do this all day.
I have been fully transparent about how all the work I do, all in an effort to sell out.
It's in the name of finance. We don't even like movies. We don't even watch the movies we talk about.
This is all a farce.
Parth and I are actually just really good voice actors, and we fake the interviews.
We've hired actors to portray us. So all the photos you've seen of us, it's not us.
It's actually kind of ironic, the amount of production value that we're putting into This is about the movie. Well, we kind of could just be doing it honestly, and it would probably be less work. But then we'd have to have a movie podcast.
Maybe we should cancel the show then. It's a good idea.
Hmm.
We'll have to look into that, and you'll have to find out whether it's canceled next week.
Yeah, that's the trick. That's how we get you to
keep
come
you
back.
coming.
But if they saw we had an episode, then they'd know we weren't canceled. But maybe then we were just announcing the cancellation. Goodbye. All right, we'll be done.